Welcome to the Value Stuff Podcast. I am your host, Dan Glazier, and I am a personal property appraiser and I value stuff for a living. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe and like this podcast so we can keep growing it. Today, I want to talk about, let's just talk about value. The name of this podcast is called The Value of Stuff. So I'd like to share with you some value, where I find value. And I'll do a little bit I'm going to be starting to do segments, what's hot, what's not. And I thought, okay, let's make this the sort of first segment of what's hot, what's not. And I'm like, where do I usually find a lot of value? Where do people think there isn't value and there is value? And where do people think there isn't value and there is or isn't? You know what I mean? You get the gist of it. So I'm going to be talking about, so what's hot, what's not. So I find the people are most surprised is the value I find in silverware. And what do I mean by silverware? Silverware, I mean, like flatware sets and tea services and serving pieces. Like, it could be dishes. And I'm talking silver though, things that look like they're silver. And when I mean by silverware, I'm specifically talking about items that are sterling silver or have at least 80% of silver content. And how do we figure that out? Well, it's very simple. So what's hot? So what's hot and what's always hot is stuff that has precious metals in it. And this precious metal I'm talking about will be silver. So how do we look at it? So I've been appraising for 30 something years. So I have, tons and tons and tons of hours and experience. I guess you could call me an expert. That word's thrown around a lot, but I'd say I'm knowledgeable more than most on trying to figure out what has silver content that doesn't. So I'm just going to give you some quick tips. So if you have a bunch, you're downsizing your parents, your grandparents, yourself, or you've inherited a bunch of stuff, or you're dealing with an estate and you got all this silverware and you're like, okay, what has value? What doesn't have value? So that would be with a what's hot, what's not. So anything that's silver plate, that's the not. And I'll talk about how to figure out if it's silver plate or if it's sterling silver. So you can't go about, like I've heard people say, oh, it's tarnishing, so it's silver plate. Oh, it's tarnishing, so it must be silver. No, you can't go by that because silver plate has a very thin layer of silver on it, so it will still tarnish, just like regular silver will. So when I'm talking about valuable silver, I'm talking about anything over 80%, and mostly I'm talking about sterling silver. So how do I figure out when I'm looking at something and how can I sort it out? Well, it's the markings. So markings on precious metal, silverware, it's been the law going way back from the 14th century in Britain. And that's when they started, places, they were called Hallmarks, where you had to take if you were a silversmith and you were selling your wares, you had to take them to a hall and they had to get stamped to say that they were sterling silver, because even before that, people were saying this is silver and it wasn't. So, people being dishonest, this isn't something new. Most people are honest. I don't want to be negative about it. But the good thing about 99% of all sterling silver and all silver over 80, it's marked. So how do we figure out these markings? Okay, there's three basic ways, a lot of different ways, but three basic ways. You can test it, but I'm not going to get into testing it with acid and all that stuff. I'm just specifically talking about the markings. So the very easiest thing, you're looking at something and let's take a flatware set. You take a flatware set and you take the fork, turn it over, you look at it, and it says sterling on it. That is easy. And all the pieces match. All the pieces are stamped sterling. You have sterling flatware. And if you have a whole set and it's fairly heavy, you probably have anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000 to $3,000, because silver is high. That's why it's hot. And that's when I find, value for people. They're like, wow, I can't believe that, it's worth that much. But also, on a tea service and stuff like that, you want to look, you're looking for any marks and the markings. And I mean by stamps. And they'll be stamped If it's stamped sterling, that is wonderful, because then we're dealing with sterling silver. That is great. But it doesn't always say sterling silver. That's the easy way. Sometimes it will be marked 9.25 at 925, and that means it's 92.5%. To be considered sterling silver also, the content has to be over 92.5%. That's why the marking will be, say, 92.5%. Also, it might not, if it's not sterling, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have value. If it's marked 800, it could also be considered valuable, because it's got 80%, and that's still quite valuable. So you're looking for 925, or possibly you're looking for 800 stamping. So 800 will be 80%. 925 is 92.5%. That's very simple. So looking for, if it says sterling, and the other thing is we're looking for 925, or we're looking for 800. If it's 800, it's not considered sterling, but still valuable because it's 80%. Just because it's not 92.5, it's still valuable. What if it doesn't say any of those? And this usually goes back to older pieces, and those are the hallmarks, and I talk about the hallmarks. And I'll give you a very quick way to read it. You might not be able to decipher it, because it is like a deciphering. So there's usually 4 markings. Sometimes there's 5. The 4 markings will be, the first one will usually be the manufacturer who made it, the silversmith. The second one will usually be the town where it's from. Usually we're talking Britain, usually with these. So it could be Liverpool, it could be Edinburgh if it's Scotland, it could be London, it could be Birmingham. There's so many, but that would be the stamping there. You do yourself a favor if you really want to know the markings. Just go online and Google it. There's some amazing websites out there that'll tell you. I have these wonderful old books. I still love using old books that tell me all the silver markings and stuff. This is called Collins Gem Antique Marks. For those that are watching a video, obviously, if you're just listening to the audio version, you're not going to be able to see those books. But there's lots of great books out there, and you can get them fairly cheap if you want to order them, or you just go online and there's different websites that'll tell you the different markings. So the first one will tell you the silversmith. The second one will tell you, the city or town where it was made. The third one is usually the marking that will tell you if it's sterling silver or if it's got silver content in it. The fourth one will usually be a letter, and that letter is a font. And usually, depending on the font in the letter, you can figure out when it was made. Like, let's say it's a certain font of an F, and you go down, you look it up, it might be 1836. So the hallmark might say that it was Smith and Smith. It was made in Edinburgh, Scotland. It's a lion on there, but you'd have to look. That would be for Britannia. Is a lion on there that tells you that it's got silver content. You have to make sure it's a proper lion, because there's people put lions on there to kind of misrepresent. But the lion on there, and then you'll have this font which could tell you the date. Let's say 1835. So that's just quick. I don't want to be too confusing in that, but those same hallmarks, all those same markings would be the same if you're looking at a tea service, if you're looking at just all your serving pieces, anything that's got any kind of silver content. We're looking for any kind of marks. If it says, we're looking for it to say sterling, we're looking for 925. Maybe it's not sterling, but it's an 800 stamp, which tells us that it's 80%. Another tip here, some countries might not necessarily do sterling content 92.5. They could be 80%, and that's where the 800 would come in, but they might be 90%, which, you have to really know different European countries have different hallmarks. So it's important to know that. So what I do a lot of times when I'm doing an appraisal for an estate, I'll ask the people, where are your ancestors from? Where did your family immigrate here from? And if they're like, they came here from Scotland, it's like, okay, no, that's from Britain. But sometimes they're from Germany. So chances are there's going to be German pieces in there. I'm going to have to look up the German hallmarks. It could be Italy. They have different hallmarks. Mostly it's several different of the European countries have their own hallmarks, but you want to look up which one is indicating that's got some kind of significant silver content, and the significant content would be 50% and above, but we're really looking at 80% and above. So that is talking about silver, like silver with value, what's hot, anything with a content over 92.5% or at least over 80%. And I'll explain a little bit about value here. So I said earlier, a flatware set can be anywhere from $1,200 to $3,000. A tea service, if it's sterling silver, it can be 5, 7, 8,000. They can be very heavy, and just the precious metal in that could be significantly valued. And I have found it where people didn't even know they had it. You know, I'll give you a quick story about sterling silver. I got called in from a professional downsizing, professional organizer to just do a consultation. She said, basically, my clients want to donate majority of their parent stuff from an estate. They just want to make sure there's nothing of value. There's some artwork and some antiques there. Okay, so I was there to look at the artwork and antiques. So I come in and I look around and I see this table that is just full of silverware. And I'm like, what are you doing with this stuff? And they're like, all this stuff is going to charity. We just haven't boxed it up yet. Okay. I said, let me at the end look at that just to make sure you're not giving away anything of value. And they said, well, we don't think it is. We think it's just over silver plate and stuff. You know, grandma or mom didn't have a lot of, valuable, silver pieces. So I said, fine. So I went and I looked at the artwork, looked at the antiques. There was nothing there of significant value. Everything was a few $100s here and there. I got to the table and I started going through. There was, this is going by memories a few years ago, but there's over $5,000 there. So this table of stuff that was supposed to go to, a charity was $5,000. And let me tell you something. It would not have made it on the floor of the charities if it was sterling silver and stuff like that. So don't say, oh, you should have given it to charity and stuff. If you really did want to give it to charity, you're best to sell it and take the $5,000 or plus dollars and then you give it to charity that way. Because if you donate, I don't want to be cynical here, but that stuff usually does not end up on the floor when it gets donated, because a lot of these people that work at these facilities, they get smart. They learn how to read the hallmarks. So do yourself a favor. If you have a bunch of silver, you're trying to figure out, is it sterling silver or if it's silver plate? Figure out, again, look for the sterling, look for 925, 800, but also learn how to read some of those hallmarks. Get yourself a book if you have a little book, or just, have an iPad or something and then just go online. There's a lot of great websites on reading silver hallmarks. One of the ones I like to use will also say, country, break it down by country. So, then you're looking at, you're looking apples to apples. Silver plate, which is not hot, because that's what this segment's supposed to be, is about silver plate. I'm going to tell you, and it is not hot at all. Like, stuff is selling at auctions for nothing, tea services. So, I said a tea service can be worth $5,000, $3,000 if it's sterling silver. The same pattern, but it's silver plate, might go for $50. And I'm not exaggerating. It's crazy how much silver plate has fallen. So hot is anything of significant silver content, 80% and above. Maybe it's 50% and above, but you don't really see 50%. You see 80% and above. So 80%, 92.5%. That's hot. What's not a silver plate. And how do we know it's silver plate? Okay, look at the markings. If it says plate on there, you right away, it's not silver plate. If it says copper on there, if it says lead on there, if it says nickel on there, it says brass on there, it is not sterling silver. Never say never, but chances are 99.9% it is not sterling silver, or at least 800 silver. If it says an EP on it, that generally means electric plate. That's not going to be silver. It's going to be silver plate. So let's wrap this up. What's hot? What's not? This segment was talking about sterling silver, and anything silver is over 80%. Silver plate is not hot. It's almost worth nothing. Donate the silver plate. If you know what silver plate, learn your hallmarks, learn how to read. Reading silver, there's chances are you make a lot of money. Also, just a tip, if you like going out to garage sales or estate sales and going in person and stuff, once you learn hallmarks, you can make yourself a lot of money, because people just put stuff out and they don't know. Just like the client that I had that was going to put everything, send it away to charity. If you can learn these hallmarks, then you can make yourself a lot of money there. People who like to do that, if you want to resell it on eBay, or you want to take it to a silver person. So that's what I have for you today. I hope this helps. What's hot, what's not. I'm Dan Glazier, the value of stuff. Please subscribe and share. This podcast can be found at all the major podcast hosts. Have a wonderful day, and I'll be talking about other things coming up. What's hot, what's not. Have a wonderful week. Thank you so much.